When it comes to repealing Obamacare, the GOP is not a united front. And some of the loudest opponents of the measures introduced thus far have been women. Senators Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Susan Collins of Maine, to name just two. So far, they were the only holdouts on the Senate procedural vote to simply begin debating health care repeal again. They also voted no on two subsequent plans to repeal and replace. Their disloyalty, as the president might put it, hasn't gone unnoticed. Like when during a radio interview, this Texas congressman seemed to challenge Collins to a duel.
Some of the people that are opposed to this, there are some female senators from the Northeast. If it was a guy from South Texas, I might ask him to step outside and settle this Aaron Burr style.
We all, of course, know how that ended. And then there's the president, for whom loyalty is a strong-arm sport, calling out Murkowski on Twitter, saying Senator Lisa Murkowski of the great state of Alaska really let the Republicans and our country down yesterday. Too bad. But that wasn't all. Today, the Alaska Dispatch News reported that the Trump administration, quote, threatened retribution against the senator for her vote on health care. Joining me to discuss what this means for women in the GOP are current Republican National Committee woman and State Representative Keiko Earl. Good to see you, Representative.
Happy to be here.
And former acting Republican Governor Jane Swift. Governor, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for being here. How friendly is your party, would you say, to women in 2017, Representative?
I think we're very friendly to women in 2017, and you can see that with the people that the president has put at the top. We have Elaine Chao. I was just with her last week in Washington. She's a fabulous representative and a role model for Republican women. And with the senators that were mentioned, they're also great role models for women. They're trying to build consensus on this very tricky topic.
You agree with that, Governor?
So I think it's great to have their voices in this debate. The truth is, if we're going to solve the issue of health care, we need to have people who understand the policy and probably geography as well. I would tell the representative from Texas to maybe look a little bit more broadly at the Northeast. Alaska doesn't really qualify as the Northeast,
Close
so
enough.
Maybe he should do a little geography lesson before he starts dueling. But you know, I think the bigger problem right now in Washington, and they could learn from our governor here in Massachusetts, is you have to engage in honest discussions around these complicated topics, not in tweeting, not in slinging insults. And I think that Senator Murkowski actually made that comment today. Let's talk about not politics, but solving really critical problems. And John McCain, I think, has challenged his colleagues to engage in real debate on substantive issues.
We can get back to bipartisanship. I want to stay on the woman thing for a minute and get back to your saying you can make a strong case. If you're recruiting women, and I assume that's part of what you do, I'm sure you do in your capacity, and they reference the following picture, which we all saw, of 13 men, 12 of them white, one of them Cuban-American. There they are. They were the 13 guys in the room debating health care, including health care that would affect every single woman in America, well beyond just issues of choice and those sort of things. How do you convince that woman you want to encourage to get involved in your party that that's an aberration, that's not what they'd be getting into?
Well, you are getting into that. I think that we have to recognize that that's the reality, and we need to do better as a Republican Party to have women making inroads to be at the table. And so I think it is a problem. And
Were you upset about that?
I think it is a problem, and I'm committed to making sure that women's voices are heard and that we have a diverse communities represented as well within the Republican Party.
Listen, if we subscribe to, if you see all white male faces, then just give up. We wouldn't have women doctors. We wouldn't have women lawyers. We wouldn't have women scientists. So, you know, I think there are a lot of women who are inspired by that picture. It's like, they need me. And we, listen, politics is not for the faint of heart. It's not beanbag. You better be tough. And by the way, there are a lot of us. If that dude in Texas wants to take on some of those Senate women, there'll be a bunch of us who he'll have to get through first.
But
I'm right there with you.
But
right there with you.
The problem goes well, and I'm sure you'll be happy to do this in particular, but probably it goes well beyond Republican. Well, the number of Democratic women in Congress is roughly 3-to-1 Republican. The total number is still embarrassing.
It is
roughly
embarrassing.
A fifth of the House, roughly a fifth of the Senate. Why is it so bad?
It goes well beyond politics. Do you see what's going on in Silicon Valley and venture capital, another industry that I've worked on since I've left office? Look in corporate boardrooms.
Right here, by the way, in Massachusetts.
Right here,
as well.
where we do a great job of paying for statues, not so good in finding women to put on our corporate board. So yes, there are problems, but We don't solve those problems unless we, A, tell our daughters what the real truth is and inspire them to get educated and to advocate for themselves and to be fierce. And that's how we're going to change it. And I've recruited women. I know that the representative has recruited women. And by the way, there's power when you're the one vote that's holding out. And I think what you'd see isn't women being threatened, although that may be what this guy thinks he's doing. But you see Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins wielding real power. They have the future of health care that they're able to now make a difference on.
But, Governor, when you speak to those women, there's a guy who's the most powerful person in the world who talks about how badly Mika Brzezinski was bleeding. We all know what was said on that Hollywood Access Hollywood tape. Megyn Kelly. How do you convince somebody? I mean, he was elected president of the United States. What you want to respond to that?
Well, again, I think you have to take that this is an unusual president. He has an unusual way of communicating.
Well, unusual is not really a fair adjective, would you say? I mean, did you say unusual since you brought up the word when you heard what he said about Brzezinski or what he said? And
he has a unique personality. That's the way he is, and that's the way.
Is that okay? Is that okay?
It's a lot of the things that he has tweeted are not okay with me. So to be clear, he's not trying. I don't think he's trying to say that he's anti-women. The Republican Party is not against women. And I look to strong women like the senators and like Secretary Chao as role models. I think that that's what we want the future of the Republican Party to be.
Let's get back to your point about bipartisanship. Is there a place for, I mean, you're moderate. Can we call you you're moderate? Are you not?
My father would say liberal, but I'll go with
whatever.
Moderate.
Well, but you're moderate to. Is there a place not just for moderate women in your party? Is there a place for Charlie Baker? You referenced Governor Baker.
Well, he's the most popular governor in the country right now.
In Massachusetts.
In Massachusetts.
And how would he play on a national stage?
Well, you know what? If we govern well in Massachusetts, by the way, one of the best economies in the country, we'll set policies that will be replicated in other places. And so, you know what? I don't think people like how things are running right now in Washington. I think we do need to look back to the states as laboratories of change, and they are working in bipartisan ways. And I also think, you know, as you know, I've long been an admirer of Senator John McCain, and I hope that the clarion call that he gave the other day. Now, listen, John McCain's going to be more conservative than many of his colleagues, but to call for a return to politics where we discuss nuanced issues, right, where we talk about the debate that they're having on Beacon Hill right now about Medicaid. That's about having entitlement programs that are crowding out money that we could be spending on education, on local aid. Those aren't tweets. Those aren't sound bites. There was a time when I was in the state Senate when you could have those conversations. I believe they still have them on Beacon Hill, and we have to get back to having them in Washington because it's broken.
But even if you're right, and I totally agree with you that on virtually everything where Washington is abdicating its role, and sometimes in a bipartisan fashion, states and cities and towns have to become these laboratories of democracy. But when people in Washington, in your party, are voting to cut Medicaid, which isn't just for poor people, but our parents in nursing homes. I had the head of Disabled American Veterans here last week. A couple of million veterans depend upon Medicaid. The states have nothing to work with. So,
except that I believe what you've seen. So, as you know, I wrote an op-ed opposing that bill and frankly, talking about some very personal medical issues for my own children that I hadn't previously spoken about. I believe what turned the tide on some of those votes in the Senate were governors calling their members of the U.S. Senate, talking about the very real impact it would have.
And women.
And politics can work, and frankly, sometimes you have to fall as low as you can fall to realize why functioning government is necessary. And there's lots of research that women working collaboratively at every level of government is the solution. So
you need more. I agree.
Very well said.
When you go to these national committee meetings, is there a talk that bipartisanship actually might be a nice thing? Or is the feeling that since we have 52 votes in the Senate and we have a majority in the House, bipartisanship is sort of a quaint notion that we don't need to deal with anymore?
I think it depends on who you talk to. I follow the Governor Baker model where you're talking about solving problems and focusing on solutions. Doesn't matter if you're red, green, blue, purple. We're working to make our Commonwealth a better place. We should be working to make our country a better place. And so those are the types of people that I hang out with at the RNC. And I think that there are folks in the Republican Party that think that way.
Before we go, you have one daughter. You have a number of daughters. If they said to you, I want to change direction, I want to get involved in politics, what would you say to them, Representative?
Absolutely.
Would
Public
you really?
service. I would. Absolutely.
Would you?
So I would. I have a daughter who wants to be a teacher, and I have a daughter who wants to be an FBI agent. So I think they have the public service bug, and they are powerful young women, so you better watch out.
They may be looking for a new head of the FBI soon, so tell her to keep her eyes open. Representative, it's great to see you. Governor, pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.